Excited again to be here with you, especially with this all-star cast we have today. Everybody knows Karl Dakin. He's probably on at least twice a week with me, also twice a week with two shows. He launched his new show last week, which Karl can speak to, and also launched another newsletter along with his daily newsletter, along with his weekly newsletter. So he's just really setting the pace for all of us. So excited to have Karl. We've got Erwin Jack here. Erwin's been here many times before, and really admire Erwin for not only what he does, but for who he is. Just a great guy, wonderful personality, somebody you should get to know if you're aligned with them. And then we've got the illustrious Bill Barkhouse, who is into oil and gas and now is really specializing in commercial drone technology. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karl. We've got the word of the day is empathy, which Erwin graciously provided. And Erwin's a quality example of empathy in the best way. So Karl, catch us up, all these new things going on, plus your initial thoughts on empathy.
Sure. Thanks, Don, for having me on the show today. I'm really happy to have Erwin back in the co-guest slot so we can talk about what he's working on. But I was happy to learn that Bill's our other guest, so I brought my new drone with me for today's conversation. So I was joking. I got it for Christmas, and I've had no time to even try to fly the thing, which kind of speaks to where I'm at. For those of you who don't know me, I work in the funding area as a coach. I assist businesses and communities in designing, staging, and running capital campaigns. And the new news is that we're launching a brand new project called RCI Community Funds with the intent of creating a number of individual funds to support underserved and economically distressed communities across the United States. And we're putting together a plan for each community that will allow greater interaction, greater integration of these economic activities through funding, with the hopes that we can help a community turn around and give it enough of an economic basis that it can start to grow and become a good, thriving community all over again. So last Wednesday, we launched a brand new newsletter for this called Community Revitalization on behalf of RCI Community Funds. We're up to 360 subscribers, and I invite the next 500,000 subscribers to sign on as soon as possible so that we can get ready to do some crowdfunding. And then we did our first show on Thursday on LinkedIn as a live stream show where we introduced the team and our concept and what we're looking to do. And that's now going to become a weekly newsletter and a weekly show going forward, where we'll have people who are experts in community organization, coordination, economic rebuilding, coming on as guests and sharing our knowledge and information so that all of the 62,000 census tracts in the United States who are designated as historically underserved can work with us collaboratively to try to help these communities get on their feet and get going again. So it's a major undertaking. It's the latest, newest thing that's going on in addition to all my other projects where we're raising funding. And so happy to be here this morning. Empathy is, I think, a great term because if you're working with someone who's trying to raise money, you really need to know where they're coming at the whole process. And at the same time, more importantly, if you're going out to people to get money, you have to know them, understand them, what their needs are, preferences are, so that you can craft your investment offer or charitable offer to match up with them one-on-one and give them the greatest opportunity to put money in your pocket to go out and do what you want to do.
Okay, and first thoughts on empathy?
That is my empathy.
Okay.
I have to know what the other person's thinking, what they're feeling, where they're coming from, If not, I'm just talking to myself, and I've proven that's a relatively boring conversation. So I want to get out there, and I want when you raise money, you really want the offer to be a mirror reflection of the investor candidate, and that means you really need to know them, empathize with them. Otherwise, you're missing the mark.
Well, that's great. Erwin, this is your moment. Been waiting for a few weeks since you were here last. Why don't you bring everybody up to date and your initial thoughts on empathy?
Okay, so right now I'm looking after our partners in terms of resources, support, and so on. And we've got partners all over the world who are looking for projects 100 million to 5 billion and beyond. And there is no shortage of projects around the world, believe me. Even just renewable energy projects alone in the US, I believe there are tens of thousands of projects there. So no shortage whatsoever. And basically, we look for projects that are in energy, renewable energy, commercial real estate, that sort of thing. And what we've discovered is that a lot of project owners, they think that they're finance ready, they think that they're shovel ready, and so on. Oftentimes, that's not the case. I would say the vast majority of times, that's not the case. I get it. I get it. It's your baby. You want things to come to reality. You want it now. But the reality is, it's a long process. It's much similar to setting up a business. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. You're not a success overnight. And you do need to work with other people. You can't do it all yourself. So what we have actually started offering just a few months ago is our project finance readiness consulting service, because people need help to get to that stage where we can go before, people who provide financing. So that's where we're at. And empathy. Well, on a previous show, Don, I said, oftentimes I see people looking at each other as transactions, and I don't care if it's in business or personal life, but that's how can I use you? And that tells me there's absolutely zero empathy. And how did we get here? Is what I keep thinking, and it seems as if the past few years, things have really slid in that department with empathy. And if you take a look online, you'll see a lot of people are talking about empathy now. We need empathy. It seems like people don't know how to empathize, and so some of these things I think we can talk about on today's show. How did we get here? How can we change things? How can we bring it back? What's at play? In all of this. So it'll be an interesting conversation to look forward to both what Karl and Bill have to say, as well as you, Don. There, you're not just sitting there and hosting. I want to hear a little from you too.
Yeah, I have to be disciplined not to jump in, especially when we have four of us. So I'll switch right over to Bill and have him complete the circle. So why don't you share a little bit with the audience and with us on little background so people get to know you a little bit better, what you're focused on, and what your initial thoughts on empathy is also, Bill.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Donald. And this is the first time I've ever had an opportunity to participate in a streaming such as this, and it's really quite exciting. Firstly, I'd like to thank Erwin for the topic of empathy. I think empathy, I'm going to address that firstly in the sense that as I give more information about who I am and what we do, I'm going to simplify it. We're helping people solve problems, and you'll get a flavor for that in just a few minutes. And so this aspect of community is very important, and the opportunity to be introduced to this community is very, very impressive for me. And Karl, you're legendary, and to actually see you and talk with you and Erwin, as well as Donald, is a real privilege here. So for over 40 years, I've been involved primarily in the resource exploration and extraction type activities. I retired from a major global oil and gas organization, all the different elements and journeys.
Static there. Does anybody know?
There's usually an open mic somewhere.
Okay, well, let's continue what we're still on.
Okay, and And so Don had shared that I'm involved with the activity of drones. We can go into a definition of drones in the future, but the most important thing is that Donald said to me is, don't drone on. When I make my comments here and everything like that. And so, well, my college mate from over several decades ago had contacted me to help him in the minerals, and originally in the resource exploration and extraction. But we're a niche outfit, and working also on munitions response and landmines at UXO, environmental engineering and infrastructure, which is the largest segment of our business, and then agriculture. So all those are technical kind of application in economic sectors, but they refer to people in need of something and someone that they can talk with, which has been the point that's been made previously, and an opportunity to listen critically to what the problems that they need solved are, and everything like that. So it gives you a little bit of a flavor here. So I'll pass the baton to Donald.
Okay, well, great. Glad to have everybody with us. I'm watching the show. I'm not sure. But with that said, I'm fascinated by everybody's situation because it shows that everybody's evolving and changing, especially in a dynamic marketplace. You know, we always talk about technology, but we forget the soft skills of relationship building, where empathy can really make a big difference, especially when you're starting to reach out to people. And I think Erwin makes a great point. You have to identify, relate, and appreciate the people you're with for just the benefit of knowledge gain, sharing, collaborating is so important, and meeting people where they're at. And I think that has a lot to do with empathy is, you know, meeting them at their point and trying to get to know them, like Karl says, be a mirror image. I'm fascinated because everybody's got a different direction, but we're using a lot of the same skill sets and elements of relationship building. So, Erwin, I'm always fascinated by 100 million to 5 billion. How do you keep your pipeline robust?
Well, we have so many partners around the world, Don, and we're using social media. Tell you, LinkedIn is one of the best sources to reach out to businesses, owners, and project owners, and that's where we get many of our projects. I will tell you, we also have partners that have people that are directly connected in these industries, so they reach out directly. I'm not privileged in that regard, and you know, I'm always transparent with people, and I also let people know that we're on different journeys, and that's okay. That's we're all different. Could you imagine if we all did the same thing? This world couldn't even function. But yeah, you know, getting back to empathy, one of the things that I want to mention too is people always will remember how you make them feel, and if you empathize with them, they will feel good about that because there's a sense of appreciation. You know what situation that they're in, you know what their struggles are. How do they go from here to there, and so on. So there's a lot of caring, a lot of listening involved with empathy. You treat them poorly, you don't empathize with them, you're not going to build a relationship, and people will remember that. I also say that bad news travels a lot faster than good news, and that's just the reality. I see Karl smiling, but that is true, you know. So in the long run, you know, when you're empathizing with people, you want to work together with people, you want to make things happen, and we realize that we have our own struggles, but if we collaborate, we can get somewhere, right?
So, how do you instill collaboration in your team?
Well, these are always questions. How do you instill soft skills? You know, it seems as if some people are more, you know, as if they're born with these skills as compared to other people. I think there's an element of that, people's personalities and so on. But I think at the same time, these skills can also be learned. You know, so you have to kind of teach people, and I think showing people being the example is a great way of doing it, because just by textbook learning or anything like that, you think you're going to learn empathy out of textbook? Really? No, I think you need to look at a person, because we are creatures of emotions and feelings, and we like to have a sense of belonging, all these things. You don't get that out of a textbook. So I think, you need to be the example. So I try and show empathy to people, and they do remember. They remember that, and I've got people that come back to me, even 2 years later. So how it is.
That's terrific, Erwin. You're an inspiration to all of us. With that, Karl, so where do you take empathy to the next level?
Well, I think that as Erwin's described it, empathy is taking into account what the other person is all about. A relationship is not a one-sided thing. And it should not be transactional, which means maybe neither party has a whole bunch in the game. It's working together with another person and group of people to accomplish a common goal. And in order to benefit yourself, you really need to understand what the other person wants, where the goals match, align perfectly, or where they may vary a little bit, and make accommodation for that. I instruct my clients, my students, when we're making a pitch, that the very first thing should not be a statement, I need money, but I think I have a way in which I can help you. And if we can verify that there is a way to benefit that person, the investor candidate, then we bring up the question of, I could use a few bucks to make all this happen a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. But it's so rare to see someone go out and learn about an investor candidate, to understand who they are, where they come from, what they're thinking, where their value system is at. And as a consequence, when you talk to someone you don't know, I started as an exploratory thing. Who are you? Other people start slamming you immediately with buy me now. I've got something that's going to make you rich, increase your sales, all that stuff that Kelly calls a pitch slap. Is hitting you in the face, and you're like, you have no idea who I am. And by you're making this statement, you not only demonstrate you don't know me, you demonstrate you disrespect me and my time, and therefore, why should I work with you? You're basically destroying any foundation for working with someone. So to me, knowing who the person is, everything about them, it's just a matter of being empathetic. Means I understand their point of view. And I find a lot of people have different points of view than I do. And as Erwin said, almost everybody has their own point of view. We're not all cut out of a cookie cutter where we all think and act the same way. And so accommodation, allowances, invitation to build these relationships just requires knowing and understanding the other person.
Well, that's great, Karl. And before I switch it over to Bill, let's bring in the audience. We've got Dennis here, who's been here for about 1.5 years. Has been in the heating and air conditioning business in Colorado for 49 years. So you got to give him credit for hang with itness, if that's a word. But mostly, he's a great guy and empathizes so well with the audience and with the show. Great group empathy is so much better than sympathy, and sounds like good fun for our communities. You're so right, because I was thinking the same thing. As sympathy is a level below empathy in a sense. Feeling sorry for somebody before you got to know them or understand them or appreciate their context is too much presumption, I believe. We've got our jokester here today. Carrie doesn't come without a joke. What do you call an oyster with a knack for comedy? A shell-larious mollusk? Well, that's a new joke I've never heard. Dennis comes back with agree we need to listen more than we talk. That's why we have 2 ears and just 1 mouth. Use your energy effectively with teamwork still works. Bill, you've made an amazing career. I followed you every step of the way to top levels at ExxonMobil and then president of the SEG Society. So how has empathy helped you along the way?
Again, my excitement for today was the suggestion of empathy, and then we were talking about sympathy. And kudos here to Mr. Dennis here. It is very much about listening. And I think that I myself and the people I associate with, and it's being represented here as well, always take the time to be receptive to listen to someone. And that really starts an opportunity to further build those bonds of trust. But it's in that critical listening is where we have been effective in being able to return something back to our communities and society. Obviously, with a scientific background, we're hoping to use science and technology to aid, some of the questions that come up and do that. And we have some very, very illustrious case use histories. But critical listening, and I see that listening taking place here in this visual medium. I see it in the comments by the participants. And I tell you that it's just energizing me that I can learn more and hopefully stay on the right track here.
Well, that's terrific. And, it's so important to learn before you do, buy some vowels before you solve the puzzle. And I think people respect you when you give them time to introduce themselves, and you'd be surprised that you may not recognize somebody just from a superficial conversation, but it's really the why that's important, not just the what. Everybody has a story. The question is, how did they end up in that story? And what did you learn from it? Because life continues. It's not an outcome, it's a continuum. And plus, it makes you feel better if you're empathetic to be on the same level as somebody else. I never liked a show like this to be when someone's at the podium and everybody's in the audience, when everybody could be a circle on the floor together. And it's easier to do a percentage of something than the whole something, right? That's just too much responsibility and accountability. So, Erwin, you're an international player. What have you found differences internationally with how empathy is appreciated?
Well, you might see it a little bit more in certain cultures and so on, but at the end of the day, we are all people. We are of the human race, so we're all human beings, creatures with feelings and emotions. We're all going through experiences every day of our lives, some good experiences, some not so good. And as being pointed out in the last few minutes here, listening is key. So we want to understand where these people are coming from. How did they get here? Why are they thinking the way they're thinking? And we don't necessarily have to agree with them. That's one thing I want to say too. We don't have to necessarily agree, but we're listening. We're understanding. Okay, I can see where you're coming from. Why you might be thinking this is where you go next. I think that's important. And because we don't necessarily agree, the other thing that I think I need to mention is that we should also not be judgmental, because I think we as human beings, we have a tendency to judge people. Why do you do so-and-so when you should be doing so-and-so? You're not showing any empathy there whatsoever. You're not going to be able to work together because now you're pushing that person away from you, right? So we have to stay away from making these judgments. Try and work with where they are, and if we show that we're trying to understand where they're coming from, we want to be able to help and show them that maybe we can help you with your situation and make some changes, improve your situation. Maybe we can work towards your goal.
Well, that's quality advice, and you never know what you don't know. So until you hear what somebody else has to bring to the table, it's like a buffet. Well, that's, after 800 of these shows, I'm a little bit of everybody who's been here, right? So I picked up some of Karl, I picked up some of Erwin, and I'm sure hopefully they picked up a little from me. And collectively, we have more of a comprehensive approach because it's not a poll of one, right? And too many people think they're an authority, and maybe to some extent, but the world changes so quickly. It's so dynamic. So even if you feel you're on top, tomorrow's a new game to be played, and it's not going to wait for you. And, Erwin just has such a quality person. I mentioned to him in private that, everybody hears your music before they care about hearing your words. right? So if you're enthusiastic, excited, positive, they'll just go along with it. I mean, it's like Forrest Gump when he started running and everybody started running behind him and everybody was asking, why are we running? Where are we running? It didn't matter. They had a leader who was running in front of them. And I think there's so much to group and collective behavior. Karl's just a wonderful individual, helps so many people. He's does some professor work at Denver University and Colorado State University, and took a whole group of kids to Belize to understand real estate down there. So, you know, when someone's multifaceted and functional, there's so many little pieces of the puzzle that you'll never really enter until someone brings you into it, right? I mean, so, and then you get fascinated. And I think fascination is a quality over frustration. And I think when more people can engineer that, you know, at the end of the day, it's how happy are you, which determines how successful are you, how comfortable with you. And one other thing before I switch it over to Karl is empathy is something that grounds you. There's something to humility. There's something to learning how to stay humble. You know, and a lot of people get caught up in their own success and accolades, and you're only here until you're not. You know, so nothing lasts forever, and most people don't celebrate and enjoy themselves enough. You know, I mean, people continue to put so much time into money, and they run out of time before they run out of money. You know, so I think it's all about balance. Also, Karl.
Yeah, thanks for the handoff, Don. I feel like I'm at the Olympics and you just tossed me the baton like 20 feet. So, anyway, yeah, a lot of people may know that I started my career in the legal industry. And one of the things that is a lesson you need to learn early on is there are two sides to every argument. And the other side may be right or wrong, and that may or may not matter if you're trying to resolve a dispute or work towards a common solution. It's very rare, if not non-existent, for one side to get everything they want and the other side to get nothing in a settlement or a compromise. And so you cannot get to that point. You cannot work towards a compromise without understanding where the other person is coming from. And this results in a need to see the other side, where they're coming from, their agendas, however you want to describe it, and then figure out where your path and their path are going to cross that optimizes an outcome for both people. This is technically the same thing when you enter into a contract and you have a meeting of the minds. Is you're saying we have two groups who are doing their own thing, but we figured out if you work together, you both will benefit. How do you make that happen? What are all the intricacies of putting together that relationship? How do we put guidelines to keep everybody on the same path and allow for the changing marketplace that Don described? So this recognition, this listening, all these things are skills that people can develop if they're not naturally tuned in that way. But if you're working to help the other person, if you understand how you can help the other person, you at least have some basis for empathy. Whether you're biting your tongue while you're doing it, that's another issue. But working with that other person to help them do what they want to do, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, excellent advice. Bill, how do you build on that?
Well, I would like to do a build on that, and I think again, our participation together is really, you know, stimulating me and inspiring me. A lot of the people now, there's a bit of a malaise all around the world, you know, due to the various weather, if nothing else, political situations and everything like that, and people are feeling more isolated, and so they would like to speak out. And so they need an invitation on occasions to that invitation to say, you know, what are you thinking? Or something along the lines like Erwin and Karl were both speaking of, TV. questions. And that response to that start, and that can be very, very, very positive experience for so many people's organizations. They get so accustomed to doing something in a particular fashion. And in some of those cases that you get a feeling they know, they can feel that they want to change. They want to have this dialogue with maybe people that they disagree with. But they want to do something along those lines to make a connection, allow them, empower them, start to get more of a handle and maybe a little bit more control of what's going on in the world that they're living in. And so I can't think of a better session again today for a topic such as empathy, and listening to the skill sets that are being shared by the people that are on the screen here. All very acceptable. A lot of positiveness that can be garnered from this engagement, particularly through empathy.
That's great. And when we go forward, we become better at who we are, not just what we do. And I think to Carl's point, a lot of times it's not what's fair, it really has to do with fairness with what's right. Come into transactions with less than the other person. Someone's got to be perfect in order to do that. So, back to you.
And so, Donald, I apologize in that your voice and your sound line, there's been a lot of interference, so I didn't hear to whoever you passed the baton to just now. I apologize.
Erwin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have had some issues there, Don, not being able to hear you. I don't know if are you muffling yourself?
No, I don't even know if it's me, but it comes and goes, I guess.
Yeah, but it's just been a couple of times here. So empathy, the other thing that I want to say with empathy, just building on what you said earlier, there is humility there, Don. I think when we empathize, we are taking time with people. And when we take time with people, we're not rushing with them, right? We're taking time, we're trying to understand. And I think what comes out of it is a lot that we can learn ourselves about people, about situations, and these are things that we take with us. If we don't empathize, then we think we know it all. We're full of pride, we're full of arrogance, and it's like, what's your problem? This is what you should be doing, and so that makes a huge difference. But we need to take time with people, and I think when we take time with people, we're probably also talking slower. We're not in a hurry to close that transaction and boom, get it done. And next and next and next. And you can go through so many next that way. You can go through 1,000 people, and you might only close one or two. But when you take the time with people, you empathize with them, you try and understand, you're trying to learn, see where they're coming from. All this that you take away there, it benefits you, it benefits them. I see that as a mutually beneficial skill that people have. And if you show people empathy, likely they are more going to show some empathy in return. I think that is more likely to happen. And we should be always the first person to show empathy, just because other people might show nothing. But as soon as they see, oh, you're taking time with me, you're trying to understand me, that changes the dynamics of the conversation.
Absolutely. Karl?
Yeah, I totally agree with Erwin's statement. I think that it's kind of a pay it forward demonstration that I do care about whoever I'm talking to. So let's start the conversation with the other person. Otherwise, even no matter what I say, even if I try my best, it may sound like I'm only talking about me and I'm only interested about myself. So you have to very intentionally, willfully put the conversation on the other person, about the other person, so that there is an understanding that you see them, hear them, respect them, and you can later talk about yourself if and when necessary. But move that conversation forward at the very beginning with about the other person and how you might be able to be of help to that other person. a lot of people sometimes forget that we are in a society which is an undefined collaboration. And if we want to work with someone else, we have to accommodate their needs and preferences and so on. So starting the conversation with, let's talk about you for a moment, rather than talking about me, I think is the best way to start.
Well, I think one of the collateral benefits is that you're starting to model for the person on who you are and what you and how you do things. And I know in past conversations, qualifying has always been a key element. So to Erwin's point of talking to 1,000 people and closing 1 or 2 deals, I know Erwin brought up last time that he has a form that he has everybody fill out, right? So that he can get some additional information up front, not only to get to know the person, but probably to see where they are in their maturity, growth towards being able to do something. And I know just like Karl and Bill and myself, you want to have everybody have the best head start that they can to get themselves rolling. And there, and people have different styles. They come from different cultures. They may not communicate in the same way. Semantics aren't always utilized the same way. So understanding that it is a dynamic, diverse world out there, how many places can you play in effectively, right? Some people are one trick pony, right? They're only good at one thing one way, and there's limitations there that they don't take advantage of. To Erwin's point, because of COVID and everything else, people have got insulated and isolated and marginalized and put off. How do you bring people back? How do you show them a better way, a different way possibly than they're used to? And I think Erwin made a quality point before. People don't forget the people who gave a hand up. Most people are always looking for a hand down to them, right? How can they be lifted? And while they're waiting, are they lifting others? If you're not true to yourself, it's hard to be true to everybody else. And at the end of the day, you come home to yourself and you got to decide, was this a proud day? And helping somebody is helping yourself because it demonstrates you have that capability. So I forgot where I left off. Maybe Bill. Thank you, Bill.
So again, I've been inspired by today's conversations and some of the user comments as well. I think the good news is that wherever you are or whatever you're doing, there's a possibility that there's going to be someone in the hands lifting up that Donald was referring to. Like presently, I live in a part of the United States which is under constant hurricane activity, and I'm a volunteer responder. So just showing up sometimes at those things, even when your own individual circumstances aren't quite going as well as they should be, but just that presence, you can make that type of connection where empathy will be, just start flowing in all directions. And so that would encourage that. And Donald and you and Karl and Erwin seem to know many of the user comments that are posting their comments and everything like that. And I believe in effect that they're reaching out for communication, connectivity, empathy, from the tone of some of their questions. And so the opportunity is there for everyone. And so it's a continued, just kind of engaging and connecting with people. Empathy by Erwin, it was an excellent topic for today, in today's times.
And we still have a few minutes to make it even better. So Erwin, how do you put more topping on the Sunday?
More topic. I don't know. I think with empathy, it also shows that you value people. Empathy is such a big topic, right? I think it shows that you value people, you appreciate people. You're trying to connect with people. You're trying to encourage people, and as I said, I think oftentimes then that turns out to be mutual. I find with conversations that, as Karl said, you talk about other people first. People want to be heard. Let them be heard. Take your time with them. And what I find in my conversations quite often is after a certain amount of time, people will ask you, Erwin, what about you? What is it that you do, etc., etc. But start off with the other person. Make them feel important, because we're all important. We're all unique. We all have our needs, and we shouldn't treat anyone less than another. We're all brothers and sisters here, people. We're of the human race. Let's work together. Let's understand each other. Let's pull together.
Yeah, that's great. A little echo there, but I think that is the reason why you've been so successful. Is it is so obvious that you have the other person's interest in mind. They say no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And if you could put the caring up front, the knowledge will come. There's more than enough information, right? With Google and YouTube, you can learn about anything for as long as you want. But what does learning do without application? And what does application do if it's solitary, right? You're just reserving too much power within yourself. And really, you're not helping yourself. So it's almost being selfishly unselfish when you do demonstrate empathy, because you're doing for others, and in turn, you'll be doing for yourself. And, I've always told people who actually came to work for me, it's not how much you make, it's who you become, because that's what you take with you. Money is very transitory. It comes and it goes, and it may not be here. Bill once taught me that if you're looking for advice, ask for money. If you're looking for money, ask for advice, right? And I think, a lot of times people are too obvious without enough information. Right. So when someone hits you up for an offer and you didn't even get a chance to know their name, you have to ask yourself, where was their rush? Why didn't they take more time? And what happens? People qualify themselves in and out of things without knowing it. Right. If I would only known that when I just said that disqualified me, when I could have asked, what do you think about that first? And if someone says, well, we're not into that, then that would probably be a clue that I'm so lucky I didn't put myself in front of it. And it is magical. It's got a chemistry to it. And I think people who are really empathetic can identify other empathetic people really well, really quickly. And I think the common thread about everybody who comes on the show and continues to come on the show is they're good quality people with good hearts, and they're not against sharing, not against letting someone else go first. Some of my best guests were the most unselfish. I mean, I talk about Ford Sykes all the time, and he's a continuing guest, top 200 Hall of Fame speaker who only got to the 9th grade and tells people that, and changed his life around and became significant. When I had him on with Cohen, who's a member of mine and Carl's cohort group, and Cohen just introduced his second book, Ford was just spending all his time promoting Cohen and asking Cohen questions. And you know what? People see how you treat others, and that gives them a good feeling of how you're going to treat them. So they don't really care what you have to say as much as how you do things with other people. And I think ultimately the big foundational element is trust, right? Through empathy, you can build trust. And through trust, you can open conversations wider, because the skeptic, cynic in people kind of dissipates. And then the curiosity and interest kind of takes over. So, Karl, I know you've probably done more transactions than any of us over 40 some years. How have you seen empathy work and change over time?
This kind of goes hand in hand with the listening, but there's a saying, you have to meet everybody halfway. And I have found in working with inventors, entrepreneurs, small business owners, customers, that all too often I need to meet them about 90% of the way, because they may not have talent, they may not have the training, they may not have the knowledge to do what they're trying to do. And when I start the conversation, I don't necessarily know where they're coming from. I don't know what their starting point is going to be. But if it turns out that they have the greatest new invention in the world and they cannot communicate it in less than 5 hours of verbal monologue, I have to work with them to help them bring that to something that other people can understand in a way they can understand it. And I have to help them develop a little bit of skill set to do that. But I'm going beyond the halfway mark. And I think that when you start that conversation, this is where empathy comes in, is you have to anticipate that the person you're talking to may not be able to meet you halfway. You have to figure out if you need to step a little bit closer, talk a little bit slower, use different wording, or translate what's being heard to verify that you are hearing what was being said. These are all things you can do to help the conversation, help your listening skill, and move the conversation forward towards building that relationship, which can last over time. And so empathy is this simple recognition of that the other person is there, and you want to do what you can do to help them be all they can be.
That's a good point. And you don't know what you don't know. And why not learn before you act? And why don't you feel how you're making other people feel? Because everybody gives you tells, right? A lot of things are nonverbal. You say something and someone grimaces, it makes you back up a little. You say something and people open their eyes and get excited, might tell you you're on the right track. And a lot of times is answering a question with a question, right? Someone asks you something you don't quite understand. Instead of going forward and trying to guess at it, why not ask, can you elaborate a little bit more? Can you always know what people say. You don't always know why they said it. And sometimes they're not even aware of what they're saying. And when you repeat the question, they may say, you're right. I left something out, or I was a little bit too whatever. And I think that's a key in empathy. Do people take responsibility and accountability? Nobody wants to hear someone pointing the finger or blaming somebody else. The person who stands up and says, hey, I'll take responsibility, even if it's shared, allows themselves to stay in the picture. It's when you get structured and you're not moving and you're not allowing anything else, but it's absolute, you're going to turn a lot of people off, because when the other person turns absolute, now you're a further distance away than when you even started introducing yourself. So, Bill, you've been an international player located in different parts of the world doing interesting things. What have you learned about empathy over time in your dealings?
Well, I think the exciting part is I think empathy is always there. I think very early today, Erwin had referenced different cultures. And so if you rephrase the question a little bit, how would different cultures engage in empathy? And some of them have some very formalized activities, maybe over a meal or something like that, and how many people come and who sits where and who's allowed to speak when and things like this. But there is this universality with respect to empathy. And today we've emphasized many times that it's the response that a person has is critically important for being assessed in the sense of further engagement by any of the parties. But empathy can play that role. I think that the business examples that have been cited today, particularly worldwide and globally by both Erwin and Karl, is that additional layer of what the setting is has a factor in playing and determining what maybe approach or something. But the thing that always has worked for me in all those different environments and different languages and everything like that was just engagement and careful listening, even if I didn't understand the words. But people many times will speak with their body, their face, their expression, their eyes. That can be the building blocks for some very, very, very fruitful follow-up discussions, interactions, projects, and long-term life friendships. So.
Yeah, well, I think you make some great points because patience and tolerance is key to getting to know somebody, right? Not rushing to something. Why not understand as much as you can for as long as you can, and then make a judgment, right? Data has power, but it depends on what kind of data, how it's analyzed, but more importantly, how it's applied. And I think it's always better to be happy than sad, optimistic than pessimistic. I mean, you're projecting all the time. Yeah, so Erwin, what would you say to take this to the next level?
Next level. Let me take it to the next level from my perspective. So when I take a look at sales around the world, I know sales cycles are a lot longer. A lot of businesses are struggling. BD people, salespeople are all feeling under pressure, and we have to get those sales. So I understand that, I really feel that, with people. And why I bring that up is because the last months, the number of emails and messages I've been getting for sales calls has dramatically increased. I get the pressure, but that is not going to increase your sales at all. I think, like I empathize with them. I understand the pressure that they're under. But we need to get back to building relationships, taking time with people, showing that we care. We want to work with you. Let me understand where you're coming from, which is really all part of empathy. If we do that, we will continue to have success. And while things may be a little bit slow now, we are building those relationships. We're building the trust there. And so when the time is there for our potential clients, they will come back to us.
So when you're dealing with $5 billion amounts and higher,
Mm-hmm.
how do you, I guess that's an important decision when you hit the green light to go forward.
Well, it is. And I will tell you that I tell people up front that investors today, they're not just doling out the cash left, right, and center. It's a very turbulent time that we are in. I suspect next year things are probably going to settle out, but we could be wrong. Is my speculation there. But we need to keep working. We need to keep working at it here with people, like build those relationships and tell them that it's going to take time, and this is the process, expect it to take longer than usual. We all want to be thorough. We want to make sure that it's win-win-win for everyone, not just for me, right? We wanted it to be a win for our clients as well. So everyone that's involved, right? All parties involved. And that's the perspective we need, and that kind of is really part of integrity, our character, and so empathy really is who we are. Let's show people who we are. We are caring people. We're sensitive to their needs. We understand. We may not always agree. We don't judge, but we do want to work together with you. And if we have our ears open, then we are more likely to get their ears a little bit open to what we have to say.
So do you think it's because a lot of people are trying to do too much, too fast with too little, that they force themselves to put pressure on their sales in order to catch up?
Yeah, and I have to say, I always see these KPIs, and I'm thinking you guys are so focused on the metrics. What about the people skills? We need to focus more on the people skills, because an unsatisfied customer is not what you want. You want a truly satisfied customer in the end.
And one last question, do you see a lot of return business, or is most of your business kind of?
Oh, people will always come back. If keep in mind, they will remember how you treated them, how you made them feel. So if you're always attuned to their needs, and where they're at, they will come back, definitely.
Well, that's great, Karl. what are your thoughts? Because I know you're dealing with so many different projects. We're talking about a dinosaur park in Texas. We're talking about special insulated glass that's being mandated by a lot of states. You're talking about community develop. So how do you spread your wings so far?
Well, it sometimes seems that I'm completely out of control and I am my own source of chaos, and I can't deny that some days. But what everybody has in common is that they're trying to do something, they're trying to solve a problem, and they need more resources than they currently have in hand. And so, having that commonality, there is a process for trying to determine who else wants to solve this problem, who else has resources, and then how do we communicate that effectively so we're creating new relationships, new teams, new collaborations that will work towards solving that problem. So if I keep it in that kind of the modality of we're all working towards solving something, and we're all trying to be more efficient in how we bring those resources to bear on a particular problem, then Dinosaur Park and window insulation are identical, even though they seem so far apart. Because in one case we're doing energy savings, and in the other case we're providing entertainment. But we need more resources than it is in the back pocket of the people that started the project. And we just need to find out who else wants this to happen and get them on board.
That's great advice. What brings to mind is it's not so much what we do, it's what we help other people do, right? So when you're a contractor engaged with somebody, you're helping them fill in their blanks, not just leveraging more blanks against them, because one day you want to make them independent, right? You want to grow them so that they don't need you, but they want you in time. And I think that's important. So, Bill, you've been a statesman and a speaker all over the world. How do you connect with audiences through your empathy?
Well, I think that I'm in that very fortunate and privileged situation that I get constant invitations. And so I've always tried to, when it's logistically possible, is to take advantage of that. I can give one quick example when I was referring to the geoscience community and geology in general, the earth that we live on. And so for many, many decades, I've been involved with the American Geosciences Institute, and that has 50 professional societies in a fragmented field, but that has 250,000 geoscience professionals. And so that's a good split. And what made me think about this was the reference to the dinosaur park. There's this very interesting research that they've done in terms of, well, how do people learn about the earth that they live on? And it turned out with some very, very high statistic that, and I even forget the range it was in, but very, very high, that most people, if they knew something and they were a little bit passionate about it, was when they were children, where they were playing with dinosaurs as a toy, or they'd had a school event or a museum event in which they saw the dinosaurs. And so you can see immediately the connection that can occur, by some of these topics, and how, the scale of that. It's there we go, fossils, so it's that fossils is a geologic term for, how all the various living things are captured in the rock record, and that's very important. And they have a tale to tell as well. And so I'm very selective right now, just so I will not be extended, and able to respond very fully to people that are extending to me an invitation. And generally, if I can't respond directly myself, I will always make an effort maybe to find someone else, or make a connection for someone elsewhere. For many times that could, if my judgment's good, then it'll work out for all the parties very satisfactorily. So great question. I'd be very interested in the few moments that we have left. Again, this is the very first time I've ever participated in this live streaming thing, but the quality of it's been very, very excellent. I'm kind of, what's the value of this to you, Karl? What's the value of this to you, Erwin? And Donald, thank you for being the chief.
Yeah, so So, Bill, usually the quality's not this good. It's just because you're present today that we've elevated to this level.
Okay. Well, see,
But no, this is a very interesting forum that Don introduced me to, in that we're not pitching a product or a service. We're having a conversation about a topic. And it tends to add more detail, more emotion, more humanity, whatever you want to call it, to the conversation. And I find all these conversations to be interesting and fun. So that's why I've set up two shows, one for funding called Successful Funding, the other one for community investment. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have more shows somewhere in my future. But this is just a great way to learn, to share, and to help build your community. So it's good for me.
Well, that's great. And me and Carl have been working, for about 10 months now? And I've been working very closely, and I'm just so impressed with Carl's work ethic, but mostly so impressed with Carl and how he approaches things, how empathetic he is. With that, I'll finish Bill's question towards Erwin. What are your thoughts towards your appearances here in the show in time?
Well, it's really a pleasure to be with everyone here. Carl, been with Carl already before, and meeting Bill here today. I mean, such high caliber people. I always feel a sense of humility when I engage with other people and hear what they have to say, because I always feel like I have so much that I can learn. And that's where I come from. Far different from when I was a child, I tell you. I've learned that the more we keep our eyes open, keep our ears open, don't talk as much, but rather listen and learn, we can do so much more.
Well, that's terrific. And Bob Berg was on the show, who wrote the Go Giver series. It's a top 10 best-selling book ever. And givers do get. And there's validity to it, but it comes in the natural course of things and in time. And it's always better to build organically than forcing. And this show, I think, demonstrates that we put ourselves second. This is not a self-promotional show. No one really cares what you do until they care who you are, right? That's the first check mark. And if you let people see you in time, like Erwin was alluding to, they see you their way. When you force the time frame, when you say, I have to have an answer today, when they say there's only one left, right? My belief, if it's good, it'll be here tomorrow. If it's not, why bother? I came up with that idea where if it doesn't have a future, don't give it a present, right? If you don't have an opportunity to see where it can go. And I've been talking to Erwin, would love to see him join our group and have his own branded show. In the meantime, I'm always happy to have Erwin back. He just makes everybody look and feel better, is the example of the best of empathy without what people may think about empathy, which is, being slower than you could be, being less smart than you are. But if you know you are, you don't have to make everybody else know that. And I think that's the key. The most confident people are not the ones who are most aggressive. They're the ones who are more receptive. They already have what they need. They just want to help other people share it, because it's one thing to have an experience and pay the price. It's another thing to share that experience with somebody to avoid them paying that price. So it's not always what you do for people, it's what you allow them not to do for themselves. And I know with Erwin and Carl and Bill, they will tell somebody up front, this is where you need to be, right? Instead of sugarcoating it or surprising people later on, because everybody wants to know not just what you know, when did you know it? And then when did you share it? And I think those are really important parts of being trustworthy and sharing empathy. So with that, we're a little bit over, but I think it was worth it. I know it was worth it. This has been a privilege and an honor again to be with all of us, include Bill, and also get to know Erwin every time a little bit better from every episode. Karl, we're just on a roll. I think Karl's going to own LinkedIn in about a year or two if he keeps going. And Bill, I'm so happy to welcome you to your first event. You were stellar. And with that, I want to thank the audience for being here and sharing your thoughts and comments. I know we had quite a crowd online that didn't comment, one of our very popular shows. So thank you again. And with that, I'll share with you tomorrow's show. And tomorrow we've got Beverly Glazer and Michelle Zeev, who's going to be a first timer. Beverly and I have been doing shows for 8 months every Tuesday. It circles around women's empowerment. Actually, on Wednesday, we're going to introduce Bill's show with Dave on the drone show. And then Kelly and Jason and myself will be here Thursday. So with that said, want to wish everybody a happy Monday and a quality week ahead. Stay tuned. Love to have you all.